So welcome everyone to our free webinar. So you'll see I'm joined by a special guest here. We've got Richard, one of my colleagues, or Rich as he likes to be known, joining us today. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time doing introductions. I do see a lot of names, which I know, and I think Rich, you're familiar with quite a few names here as well. So my name's Arlene, as you can tell, and pretty much I've worked for People Unbox for about, it'll be 5 years next year. That's quite scary actually, how long it's actually been. I'm one of the facilitators, but as well as doing leadership, I'm also a mental health trainer, likewise with Rich, and this is something we're quite passionate about. So we're really looking forward to kind of sharing things we've learned along the way, and then really just thinking about how you can embed wellbeing into everyday performance.
Thanks, Arlene. Yeah, I couldn't stay away, team. This was heavily advertised to be just Arlene, and I wanted to come and get involved with it because it is a subject that we're really passionate about at People Unboxed, and we do want to try and make a difference to people's lives. And one way we can do that is by embedding well-being into the everyday at a workplace. Quite a lot of this people would say is blue sky thinking. I want to challenge that today and see what we can give you to as a starting place to help with making it a reality. So I'll hand back over to Arlene to talk through the different things that we've got coming today before we start looking at why early intervention matters.
Thanks, Rich. So I want to start just off with a few housekeeping pieces. Now, if you've been on a webinar with us before, you'll know we record the webinars, which we're already doing just now. And that's just so that we can share the recording with you, but also for those that maybe have missed it because something's come up last minute. I would encourage you today to use the chat. So I see you've all started to use the chat, which is fantastic. I would encourage some emojis. So good to know how you're feeling. So maybe put a wee emoji in just now. Let me know how you're feeling and how your day's been so far. Now, as you see, there's no cameras at all. So it'll just be me and Rich, unfortunately, that you see throughout the session. Well, fortunate for some, unfortunate for others. And for me, this just gives you an opportunity just to sit back, enjoy your lunch, just listen and take it all in. But I would ask yourself as we go through the session as well, just what it is you're looking to get from today's session. So very interactive, though you can't speak, we will encourage you where we can to use the chat and just kind of ask questions. There's no question a silly question. I guarantee you if you're thinking it, someone else will be as well. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, we're going to start off by really thinking about why that early intervention really matters. So it's understanding the impact of that timely support and really the difference that can make with wellbeing and performance. Now, we want to move away and shift that culture of support just to be consistent and really inclusive. So really thinking about how we can start to do that and really reflecting what you're doing currently. Then we're going to give you some practical tips. So wouldn't be a webinar without some tips, some takeaways and things you can go away and do. So we want to look at how you can integrate wellness action plans and really make them regular conversations. Now, you might not have heard of that, so don't worry, we will give you all the details of what that consists of, but really how you can just make that a regular thing. Then look at one-to-one, so really how we structure that, make sure it's meaningful check-ins, but we want to also balance that work life, that well-being, and then really work pressures we may have as well. And then thinking about how we align our wellbeing conversations with performance and management goals so people can thrive. We don't want people just to survive. So please, I appreciate this might be quite tough for some people to speak about, but for me, it's a safe space. We can explore together. The more vulnerable you are, the more you'll actually get from the session. So, going to start us off with a question. So what is it you're looking to get from today, or what are your expectations, or are there any possible challenges you're having? So it'd be good if you could pop them in the chat for me just now. So just Pamela saying there about those high sickness absence rates. Yeah, so what can we do to be more proactive? I would say probably a lot of that stuff is embedding those cultures. I love that, Emily. Open minds. Yeah. And I think learning from each other today as well. I think that's really important. Yeah, And that's another thing, Rach. How do you actually approach someone and start that conversation, especially if people aren't very open as well? Yeah, I love, and I know Kimberly, you are doing some great things there already. So it's really how you can build in that and share those ideas as well. So what would be good is if you can keep doing that in the background, just really pop in any expectations, any challenges, and hopefully we'll be able to answer these as we go through. And if not, then we will have that space at the end for questions. So I'm going to pop and hand over to Rich now to take you through why we're looking at that early intervention.
Yeah, thanks, Arlene. And it's really good already to see people interacting with the chat. Keep that coming. Everyone's welcome here. And we want to hear your points and your opinions, even if they come through at a later stage. What I like to, what I, would like to address straight off the bat is we're going to be looking at ways to make it a proactive rather than that reactive approach. So we're not just waiting for people to get to that crisis point. We're trying to get the early intervention as soon as possible. And there's a reason why timely support matters. So if we think about the costs of delayed intervention, oh, going into the room chat, let's be clear around the challenges here. What gets in the way of early intervention? Why don't we get to people as quickly as we can? Think of it from the individual's perspective, maybe the manager's perspective, the team's perspective, the organization perspective. What gets in the way of early intervention? And what we mean by intervention is getting to someone to intervene with them be, becoming ill, unwell due to their mental health and well-being. Yeah, that's right. Noticing changes because or not noticing changes because you're too busy. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, not wanting to overstep is often a reason, Emily, isn't it? We don't want to encroach. If they're not bringing it to us, they probably assume they probably don't want to talk about it. So I'm not going to encroach. It's maybe rude to intervene, and that can be from experience, but also that can be a cultural barrier as well. Yeah, that's a good point as well. Cabby's saying there about it's not a one size fits all, is it? It's not that we could just copy and paste to work with everyone. For some people, definitely works. For others, that's not going to be a solution. And I also feel the remote working that we find ourselves in more and more in the workplace, for those that it's relevant, that's a potential reason why we don't get to the early intervention, because of the potential disconnect if we don't try and address that. And there are other reasons. Kim saying there, yeah, the stigma, not being open to that of mental health and well-being and those discussions. But if we're ignoring the early warning signs, that that doesn't that doesn't just save time. Oh, if we just don't talk about it, that saves time. If anything, what it does is it multiplies the costs, and there are some severe costs if we have a look at these now. So escalation, because if it is a small stressor for an individual or a collective, that can grow into something a lot bigger, a lot more sinister, which results in major implications on performance and health. We've got people who uh, demonstrating absenteeism or presenteeism, where employees either miss work or they show up, but they're disengaged or don't have the motivation, the productivity to create results. It has an impact on the team as well, because there's a decline in morale, collaboration, and also trust if we don't address the early warning signs. And a study from SHRM found that replacing a burnt-out employee can cost anywhere between 30 to 200% of their salary. So there is business sense there. Furthermore, an interesting study from Mind in the UK found that 1 in 5 employees feel they can't talk about the stress until it's critical. This needs to change, because we can't just wait for people to get to breaking point. We need to change that approach and have an early intervention and make and make well-being more around performance strategy than just being a nice to have. And what I'd like to bring or highlight, one of my favorite things to bring out in any well-being session, is the stress U curve. If any of you have done the mental health and well-being training with us, mental health first aid, we would have discussed this. And I feel this is a really useful image to consider two things. One, for the lens of ourselves, how we're feeling, but also two, through the lens of the people that we're supporting, managing in a business context, because our well-being is related to how much pressure we are under. Now, too much pressure, we can see on that far side of stress, that's where we burn out. Not enough, though, on the other side, that's where we're bored, disengaged, and we're not getting a level of performance. What we want to be aiming for is that high well-being, healthy, high performance zone. And if we think about that, that results in some great things: increased focus, creativity, collaboration, to name but a few. Whereas if we're in those low well-being states, which can be the disengagement, but also focusing on the stress, that leads to lower engagement, increased errors, absenteeism, burnout. Lots of studies have found that actually, when we have got high well-being teams, they are 21% more productive, and there's a 41% decrease in absenteeism. That's from Gallup. Another study from Oxford University. Happy employees are 13% more productive. We need to think about how we can use this and try to put the right amount of pressure, as someone said in the chat earlier, on an individual level to get the most out of the staff around us. And what I'd like to ask everyone on this call is, and if we start a poll here, who here can recognize in themselves when they are at tipping point, when they are going up to that high performance? So, but equally, then they start to step into that strain piece where they start to make the errors, and what those look like as well. So the poll is on the screen. Do interact where possible. And do you know yourself, or do you just keep your head down and soldier on until it's too late, where you're in that further position of stress, where you're down that slope, and it's a lot more difficult to then get back up? Far easier to have that early intervention, as we're discussing. However, as we found from Mind, 1 in 5 people say they do not report stress until it's critical, and that has to change. So it's good to see. We'll give a few more moments for you to interact. Yeah, I think, well, if we publish that as a poll, we can see that some of us are good. That's great. Okay, recognize those signs, and we're going to talk about what to do with them later. Equally, sometimes we are, and that links to that. Usually, someone spots it first as well. When we're in the thick of things, we often, I love this expression, we can't see the wood through the trees. And it's really important that we don't just look out for ourselves, we look out for the others. So here's the other lens for those managers out there or team members out there. And we don't need to run a poll for this, but do you recognize in your team members, your colleagues, when they're at tipping point? Because if we're going to move the needle on this approach, we need to think about that. And what we need to do is move to a more proactive than reactive approach. And I'd like to hand over here to Arlene to take us through that.
Yeah. And I think proactive's the key for me, Rich, because it's not something that's gradual. If you think about that tipping point, before you know it, you fell and you fell off that cliff. So we really want to look at how we can build that culture of really consistency, but also really being proactive with our support. So I'd like to get you involved a bit here. And what does a proactive culture look like for you? So I'd like to hear from your point of view. What does that mean to you? And potentially, what would that mean to your team members? We know they're all different. And I think, Cabby, you spoke about that this morning as well, very earlier on, that we've got very different members within our team. But what does a proactive culture look like? Or maybe think about what things you are doing that's reactive just now. Yep, absolutely. So you're daily checking in with your teammates. I love that, mate. So you're actually finding out what's going on.
Yeah, that's a really good point by William, isn't it? And I'd say even more than that, Arlene, it's about meaningful daily check-ins, isn't it? That's the key there.
I think that means different things to different people as well. That's where I would say it depends on the person. And I think, yeah, what Lucy said there about that open door policy and active. I mean, what does that actually mean? So for me, I used to have a manager that says, oh, I've got an open door policy, come to me anytime. But do they actually mean it? So I think actions speak louder than words, I would say, from that point of view. Love that, Helen. Supportive, knowing your team, understanding their needs. And yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. They do change over time. Different things can happen that possibly might lead them to wanting different things. That's okay, Emily. Yeah, encouraging. Yeah, and look, we might think that they're two separate things, but they're going to overlap and it's absolutely going to impact what they're like in work. So I think we have to take into account personal life and inside. And then Sandra's saying team members flag risks or concerns quickly, even if they're small. Absolutely. We can be proactive and catch that when it's a small thing. If we don't and we hide away and we wait for someone else to notice, then that's when it becomes that reactive way that we've all spoke about. So love that there, Sandra. So when we think about that, we want to move from responding to crises and preventing them by having those regular wellbeing conversations. And if we build that culture where everyone feels included and it's consistent support that everyone's getting, then we are going to do that. Now, if you look at the differences, we want to really think about that support's ongoing. It's not just a once or every time we have a catch up. It's really thinking about and being purposeful with it. Wellbeing it's expected to be part of your one-to-ones, not just a nice to do. You have to actually do it and add meaning and really mean it. So it's really focusing on how we can prevent those problems and really build resilience. As managers, we're trained to come up with solutions, fix things, but that's not potentially what that person might need. So we need to be able to spot those early signs, start those conversations, as you've all said, and I think that's really important. But then it's not just their responsibility, HR's responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility. That will lead to healthy employees who are thriving in work, not just surviving. So some of these already tie into that intervention and that early intervention in terms of what we spoke about as well. So jumping straight to fixing, that's not really helpful. We need to think about how we view wellbeing in the workplace, and we've all got a part to play. So there may be one or two things that resonate with you. And Pamela, I see that building resilience is really a key thing. And I think that's something we cover a lot. We need to know potentially what that person might be suffering with. I mean, I could speak here for 2 hours on resilience and how to build resilience. But I think it starts off with that getting enough sleep. And Rich is certainly going to share some more tips towards the end that I think will be helpful. And if you've still got more questions, then we can absolutely delve into that a bit deeper for you as well. But you get better at dealing with things the more you deal with it. So the more we're having these conversations, the more open people are going to be with you. And that's probably going to make them feel safer as well. But they have to take responsibility themselves as well. So yeah, I get that, Kimberly. It's everyone's responsibility. But you have to think potentially it may be we think that something's going to go away. We maybe don't discuss it, but we need to get to the root cause of what's potentially happening. So maybe you've got some managers that don't feel comfortable having these mental health conversations. So maybe we need to do a bit around that, right? How do we build resilience? How do we educate people? It might be looking at mental health first aid course for these managers that are leading teams. Because if we don't provide training or provide support, we need to give them the confidence to build their skills and have these conversations. But we really want to look at how we build that proactive approach using some really practical tips. So if we think about shifting from that reactive to proactive, so that starts with consistency. So small, steady actions. So we want to really look at how we make that lasting change and not just react to things that happen, but make it part of that daily routine. Now, get a nice little pyramid to share with you. So for me, it's thinking about how we make that shift. So we're having those one-to-ones, which I think is fantastic. So make sure we are having a purpose to these, and how do we embed that well-being part to team routines, whether that be in meetings or whether that be in reviews. But we have to educate our leaders to listen actively and try and get to that empathic listening where they can, and then just follow up consistently. Try and catch things before they become a problem. Normalise that conversation. So the more people feel comfortable talking to you about it and it's just a normal conversation and it's not felt forced, then people will open up to you. Again, really pay that attention and care to every team member. And it's respecting each individual as an individual and what they need, but also potentially what their communication style is. Some people prefer face to face. I prefer a chat. I would rather somebody spoke to me than send an email or a message. So you have to know your team. And then measure that team well-being. Take it as seriously as performance and potential key performance indicators you have in place as well. But share those positive stories of success and support. It really is important that we share that. So what things do you think as a company or as a manager, what things are you doing really well just now? Does anyone get any examples? Because I think this would be helpful for everyone. And there must be some things you do really well. I don't believe you wouldn't all be here if you weren't passionate. So taking that pressure away, Kimberly, I take it, by doing them more informally, then makes them feel more open to actually talking. Just a conversation, love that. And then Lucy, how's it going, chats? Yeah, and that's the key's in the name for me. How is it going? I love the fact that you mix it up, because then we're giving other people an opportunity to connect, and possibly they might get so much more, or they might feel more open with that person as well. Love that, Cabby. Yep, I seen the sharing going on, don't you worry. I seen all the different people that had applied and actually came onto the webinar. So yeah, that's a great example, because knowledge is power, and the more we can share and celebrate some great examples and things we can do, we can help and make a difference. Now you can see from that base of the pyramid, this is what we need to build that strong foundation and really start to embed wellbeing into workflow. And part of that is building one-to-ones into your routines and your team routines. And I think you've all really spoke about that already. And you're going that bit further as well. So I see what you're doing, Kim, there. More mental health first aiders, which is only going to increase and reduce that stigma. And lots of resources. Like, I love you thinking about your CPD. Yeah, that's very important, Helen, as well. And think about, yeah, what can we focus on? Because different parts of the year mean different things to different people. So what we're going to do now is Rich is going to take us through how we can build this into team routines, but also really have meaningful one-to-ones.
Nice. Thanks, Arlene. Yeah, and really good to hear that people are using those one-to-ones and catch-ups. And what this is an opportunity for you to work out is give yourself a pat on the back if all of this is already being used, but equally look for the opportunities that you can bring more out. And Pamela, haven't forgotten you about resilience. We did do a webinar back in 2023 on resilience, and here is the link. Okay, so it's in the chat, so you can watch that when needed. Okay, so that is a webinar that was run in 2023 and got some good tips on that, Pamela, and others. Obviously, there's lots of our webinars on our resources page if you follow that link. Shameless plug, that was almost like a halfway point in a YouTube video, wasn't it? So we're back to the content team. We're going to look at some meaningful one-to-ones, and this is an opportunity to check progress and check in on the person. But how do we do it? Well, here's a few tips on the screen. And what we can see here is 4 key points. First off, And this may sound like a lot of common sense to people on this call because you are like-minded. You're here because you want to explore well-being. This isn't always obvious to other people, and it's about starting with the human. Quite often on a one-to-one, because of the pressures that we face, we go straight to the task. And I want to be clear here, starting with the human isn't just asking, you okay? And then moving on as a sort of check, well, I've done that. It's checking in on them on a personal level. How are you feeling this week? What's been energizing or draining your energy lately? We're also looking for patterns. How are they? What are they saying? But also, what are they not saying? Is there anything they're excited about, stressed about, both inside and outside work? And then what we should be doing here when starting with the human is normalizing vulnerability. Whilst we don't want to take over their stories, their space to open up, it's okay to share our ups and downs to model that openness. That's the first part. The second part is all around reviewing work progress. So how do we make sure we're making progress? So we've done the human bit. We're now going to use meaningful one-to-ones to check in, and this is where we can offer motivational or developmental feedback. Again, there's a webinar for that. We celebrate wins. We discuss challenges. We offer coaching, mentoring, guidance, and here we also clarify priorities to help them focus on what matters most. So we see how the two start to combine. We also explore the well-being. That's the third piece. We ask about the balance. So how's the workload at the moment? Are you getting enough time to recharge? If you do flexible working, are you being able to claim that time back? What support do you need from me to make this happen? And also, what are the resources available? It's really nice to see that people have mentioned some of the resources, such as EAPs or employee wellbeing initiatives. And within this bit as well, it's important to encourage the boundaries. So reinforce that it's okay to say no or to utilize the team as a resource and collaborate or delegate. Finally, part of that one-to-one, and hopefully you're starting to see this isn't just well-being. Well, no, this is because it's well-being and work together. We're looking ahead. We're going to set intentions. So what things are they going to work towards? More so, what one thing are they going to accomplish this week that's going to make them feel proud? Or how can you support them to move forward? And then it's always good to end with some form of appreciation. So thank them for being open or vulnerable if they showed that, or the efforts or the piece of feedback they potentially gave you. So what Arlene and I would like to know is who who feels like are currently having meaningful one-to-ones with their managers or with their direct reports, and let's see what people feel. So if you do, brilliant. But if you feel there's an opportunity there to make it more meaningful, then here's a few suggestions, and I'll cover some top tips before I hand back to Arlene to cover wellness action plans. Yeah, thanks for engaging. We'll give it a few more moments. Yeah, I feel we all full foul of not bringing some of the human element in. I'll attest to that because of the pressures that we have. We find we find that we need to get to task. And for some people, that's maybe what they need, but it doesn't hurt to start with the human side as much as you can. If you're doing that more often than not, then you're moving the needle with that. It'd be good to see what the results are so we can see that a few of us, yeah, we feel like we are having meaningful one-to-ones. Brilliant. So if you are, share that with others within your workplace to make that happen. Some feel we can make a bit more of a difference, and then some are easier than others, and there are opportunities to work on. So there's some good tips and tricks, and remember, the content will be available on the downloads for you to use the video if you want to refer back to this. Final thing from me is just some top tips, really. So we've discussed the cost of delay in intervention. One thing we can do to make sure we're intervening early, making a proactive rather than reactive approach, is having effective one-to-ones. And there are some tips around that. So first and foremost, consistency. At first, if you are changing it, to start with a human as an example, that might feel quite strange for everyone involved. But if there's consistency around it and those things are regular and the check-ins are regular, that builds a safe space for people to then eventually open up and talk about what really matters. Being flexible with your approach. So for those that have done insights or color profiling or our tool profiles unboxed, some people prefer directness, whereas others need warmth. And it's about tailoring your approach because it's not a one size fits all. If people do open up, it takes a lot for them to do that. Reassure them. Show gratitude. The fact that they trust you and they feel they can open up, that is a good thing to celebrate and reassure them that it's okay. Something we can do is give space, and this is about giving silence. Always worthwhile counting to 5, letting them finish, asking more questions to gain a deeper level of understanding and reflection. Don't rush to fill every pause and be comfortable with the silence. It's really good to hear that. I think it was Kim from Red saying about the documentation. Yes, we can document lightly, so any key theme that's going to help you to follow up and support them, but don't make it feel like it's a performance review or it's a piece of paper that's going to go somewhere else. That's going to close them up. And finally, let's make sure that we follow up. So having that consistent theme, it doesn't just stand alone. We're courageous enough to ask the questions about, hey, you were saying last week this was on. Tell me more about that. So here's some good ways to embed and make this part of the norm and making our one-to-ones effective. And there is a bit of a resource we can use here as part of these one-to-ones, and those are wellness action plans. And I'm going to hand over to Arlene now to talk through that.
Thanks, Rich. So we're going to look at the wellness action plans, as Rich said, and it's really looking at this as a resource. So for me, this is a very simple tool that can help you identify really what's going to help an individual's well-being. And that's the key word here for me, is that individual, because individuals all mean different things. Looking at how those early signs show and how they may need some support. So they might show up differently. If we think back to that stress curve, some people might go more into their work, some people might withdraw. And then what actions or adjustments can you help them stay well at work? So I think it was right in the very early on that someone spoke about a high level of absenteeism. So it's really just thinking about what can we do more proactively. I think it was Pamela that said that. So we really want to open up that dialogue between you and your team members, help identify particular stressors, and that might be something that they may want to talk through. Maybe it's getting to the root cause of what's actually making that happen. And really, that will help you understand what they need and their experiences, and that will then allow you to support them better as well. But also, it helps with their work performance. They'll be more productive, they'll be better performance, and they will actually enjoy their job and want to come to work as well, because they'll have more job satisfaction as well. Now, I'm going to ask you another poll question here. So I'd be interested to hear, does anyone currently use the wellness action plans? So let me just get the poll for you. Okay, so who actually uses wellness action plans with their own team?
People were quick to answer that one,
Yeah,
Arlene.
that was very quick. I think that's quite resounding. Oh, we've got one person that does. I'm interested to hear. That's if you're brave. Do you want to be brave? Safe space. Be nice to hear from you. So I'm just going to share these results because for me this is quite an overwhelming result here, that we've got one person that does. So well done for being ahead of the curve and actually using these wellness action plans. And then don't worry if you're not. Today, that's what it's all about. So for me, we think about, what I want us to start thinking about is who owns these wellness action plans. That'd be a question for you in the chat. Who's going to own these wellness action plans? Who is it? Is it you? Is it them? Is it HR? Who owns them? Pamela's right in there. Yeah, absolutely. That's the key thing. You're supporting that individual. Your well-being is your responsibility. There's no taking away from that, but you're absolutely there to support. Now, HR's not. It's not shared. It can only be shared voluntary if that person wants to. But the key thing is the manager is there to support. I knew you'd put a gold star on it, Rich. I knew you've put that. Didn't even know it was you, but I guessed it was you. So we really need to look at these 5 main things, as we said. So when we think about introducing these wellness action plans, and don't worry, I will give you a nice little support document to take away with you. So it's really explaining what it is. If you remember back to what Rich was talking about, this might be a huge surprise. People don't like change if they don't understand it. So be clear that this is to support them. It's not to performance manage them. Really keep it voluntary and confidential. Look at how we really keep that person well. So what helps that person stay well? How can we help them with those early warning signs? And really look at what actions we can take and agree on that. Now, document them, but only share with their consent. We really have to keep that information secure and up to date. Make sure we do regularly review it. So whether that be potentially every quarter, this will be different depending on the individual and what they need. But also think about major changes. Now, that could be personally or professionally, especially if they step into a new role or take on new responsibilities, or maybe something happens at home. But adjust it as needed. And that's the thing we need to do, is keep it alive. If we keep it alive and integrate it into these one-to-ones, as you've all spoke about earlier on, make it part of a daily routine or a team routine, and really look at reinforcing that well-being part and just make it part of everyday culture. So it's not an add-on, it's just part of what we do. Now, there are lots of different processes and procedures that are implemented in work. And the view is it should help our colleagues and our team members. But sometimes they can fail before they even get started. So it's just making sure that we're consistent. We explain what that purpose is of the wellbeing action plans. That's the thing that's going to get their buy-in. So we want to look at how we can get their buy-in, build their trust, and remember it's not about paperwork. Think about it as a partnership. That's the key thing for me. Now, it's really important that you're clear with your expectations, that privacy piece, and really respecting boundaries. That will help you build trust, and people will notice this, and it won't be used in a negative way. We need to have the person's best interests at heart. If someone doesn't feel safe or know what's expected and there's not that psychological safety, then they're not going to get on board. So we really need to think about how can we be proactive and embed this into routines. So really thinking about this has to be voluntary. So the privacy piece has to be only shared with their consent, and not, this will change. When we think about well-being, things change over time. We change as people, but we have to set these boundaries. You're a manager, but when it comes to well-being, you're not there to fix or support. The best thing you can do is just listen. Give them that silence to really be open and honest with you. Keep the discussions focused on work-related support. What adjustments do they need? What is within your control? Signpost them. Do they know where they can get help? Now, whether that be occupational health, HR, or if you have the EAP, then it's using that EAP and knowing that these are private and confidential services they can use. Make sure we're applying that fairly across all the team. There needs to be consistency. And look at getting that routine and review it every few months. And use the same supportive tone and approach with everyone. Fit into their individual needs. So just think about, if you're going to open up and talk to someone about your work or your stress or your concerns, what would you want your manager to be like in these 3 areas? You want to feel reassured. And if you're going to show that vulnerability, you need to know that that person is your best interest at heart and puts these 3 things in place to build that trust. Now, sometimes it can be a bit tricky to know what questions to ask. So for me, we have a wellness action plan to share with you. So this is something that you can find on Mind's website. So what I'll do is I'll just upload the PDF, which is the actual document for you. Now, don't worry, I will share it with you when I send on the communication after the session as well. So for me, this is a really nice document, and it's based on the Wellness Action Plan from Mind. So these questions are all questions which are in that Wellness Action Plan. Now, you can find this on their website, and there's some really nice things on their website as well. So in terms of that resilience piece, Pamela, there'll be some things there that will absolutely be able to help you too. So it's using these conversations to put together that written support. So it's really exploring what things do keep them healthy. So for me, I know if I don't get enough sleep and I don't exercise, you don't want to speak to me because I'll be quite grumpy. And there's Rich nodding because he knows me well. But it's also thinking about potentially what situations might trigger you, because that's really important to know, and that can be poor for someone's mental health. But then what can you do to support and help them stay healthy? So how can you enable that for them? But also notice any warning signs and early warning signs, and then ask them what steps. So I know if I don't get my exercise or I don't do this, then it's going to impact me in terms of work and as a person. So it all works together. If we support someone's well-being, they can be sustainable in terms of performance. That was quite a lot there. I felt that was quite a lot of information there. So I know you might need some time to digest it. So as Rich says, keep noting down those questions. We are happy to answer them as we get towards the end as well. Now, Rich is going to take us through thinking about that well-being and that performance element together.
Yeah, and thanks, Arlene, for those questions. Those wellness action plans, that's a really good resource. Do save the link if you don't want to click on it now, and also the PDF that Arlene shared, because there's some good ideas that can be generated from there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about well-being and performance. That might seem a bit out there, but they are intrinsically linked, like we've discussed. And we can see here from the image on the slide that when when we have a high output but low well-being, that is going to potentially lead to burnout. If it doesn't lead to burnout, it leads to masking, it leads to demotivation, it leads to a lot of negative things. However, if we can have someone who has a high output, so still very much focused on performance, but coupled with high energy and positive, strong well-being, this is where people start to innovate, generate new ideas. This is where they get into that flow-like state. They're motivated, they have that intrinsic relationship, that psychological contract with a place of work where they go above and beyond. So it's, for me, this is about redefining performance. It's not just about getting those results. It is about, to Pamela's point, it's about resilience. It's about creating environments where people thrive, not just survive. And within our mental health first aid and well-being sessions, we look at that video about moving from that survive to a real thriving culture and individuals who get the most from life in and outside of work. It's important that we start to measure what matters. And as we said earlier, when well-being rises, performance follows. So that makes business sense. So when well-being and performance are aligned, people don't just work harder, they work healthier, smarter, and there's longevity there as well when we talk about retention and minimizing sick days. So there's a few things we can consider to align well-being for performance. I'll cover them now, but I'll also put into the chat the things that you can consider. So some top tips here. So what we can do is redefine the performance. That's the first one. We're going to include some well-being metrics. So we can look at engagement, stress levels, energy, also alongside the output, the usual KPIs we see. We want to promote psychological safety. We want people to feel okay that it is okay to open up, give feedback, to take risks, to calculate risks, to make mistakes and learn and grow and support people through those. We want to create sustainable work habits. So we want people to be focused on getting things done, but not overworking. We want to encourage breaks. We want to celebrate people who do that, who build that into their working days rather than saying, oh, you took an hour off for lunch today. We want to celebrate those things and offer that flexibility to people. We want to integrate well-being into goals. So we want to set performance goals that also account not just for the key metrics, but also for health and for their well-being. We want to give people the resources that we've discussed already in the chat to be able to take ownership of their mental health and their well-being. We want to make sure that we're monitoring how well-being impacts productivity and engagement. And then the last two, I want to lead by examples. It's all well and good saying this, but if leaders aren't demonstrating some of these key aspects, then this is going to aid or fuel a negative rather than a positive and balanced culture. So we want to model the behaviors that promote positive mental health and well-being. And finally, the energy check-ins. This is where we ask meaningful questions. How energized are you today? So we're going to find how people are, and then we can keep a track of that. Remember that jotting down to see where people are and helping people to keep that energy high. Because as we can see from the slide, if we are high output and high energy and high well-being, then it's going to lead to the innovation. It's going to lead to all those benefits that we discussed beforehand. Okay, so let's look finally into how we embed but also measure the well-being within a workplace, because this all sounds, for some people, for some cynics, not you lot of course, but some cynics would say this all sounds very good, Rich, but how do we actually embed it? Well, we've got 4 key points on this slide, and this is where I'm going to bring you back in, ask you to use the chat. What could we do to bring these 4 areas to life? So type your ideas into the room chat. These could be things that you're already doing, but also things you could do to bring one of those to life. So you can select what you want and say how you would bring it to life. And go blue sky. Go blue sky thinking. Get creative with it. Because through that idea, we might find something that actually works. So how do we bring these to life? How do we embed it into goal setting? Whilst people are typing, I'll
You're going to
share one
share
that.
your set? Are you going to share?
Yeah,
That's what I was waiting. I was waiting on you saying that.
I was gonna share mine. I'll share. No worries. I like the idea of balancing performance with sustainability. I don't prescribe to the cultures that celebrate people that are working 60 hours a week and are celebrated for it. I think it's important to celebrate the ones who get their work done in the hours that they're meant to and have those disciplined breaks, and that is much more sustainable and it avoids burnout. It means we're in that high performance zone. Okay, other people's ideas in here as well. Yeah, Kim saying we include well-being personal objectives in our yearly appraisals. Yeah, such as run a marathon or complete a triathlon.
Love it.
Stealing that, Arlene, right? Arlene's
You're
doing
not
a high
lying.
rocks, everyone, next year. She's going to be building that into her appraisal, so she's going to high rocks. But yeah, I love that. The fact that we're talking about how do we build well-being goals, physical well-being goals, mental well-being goals as well. So I love that.
My favourite
Allow,
one's the reflection one, Rich. As you
yeah,
knew I would say that anyway. And I think
yeah,
that's really important. See, if we're not grateful, we don't take time to reflect. And we need to allow people that. We're all so busy. But just think how much more you could get for just investing that time and reflecting.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
huge.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Yeah, and encouraging it and celebrating it when people do it and allow them to discuss if
Yeah.
applicable what they reflect on as well, because that people can learn from that. Uh, I like the fact there's a consistent theme here about personal
Mhm.
goals, including a goal that's personal to them. Absolutely. We've discovered on other webinars how it's so important to allow people to set personal goals. Yes, if it aligns with the business, great, but also what is it that you want to achieve as well? That keeps us a lot more motivated, doesn't it?
I don't know what I was thinking, Rich, actually taking a wellbeing day to do my high rocks. I just realised that I actually did.
Yeah, Yeah, well, shout out
Oh,
to
well.
Arlene there. Yeah, wellbeing day for hire. It's not for everyone, by the way, team. Okay, so yeah, some ideas. Thanks very much for people for sharing that. A couple of other ideas. So encourage employees to set goals, like and it could be run a marathon, but it could be as simple as improving sleeping habits or
Yeah.
taking a regular 30-minute break and keeping a track of that and being interested in that if you're their line manager or supervisor, and make it as smart as possible. Balancing performance with sustainability, I've covered with the idea of not just saying, look, celebrating those that work long, hard hours, celebrating the ones that manage to be productive within the hours that they're given. Encourage development goals we've discussed around how they can develop, but also these can be things around emotional intelligence, stress management, mindfulness training. It doesn't just have to be the formal things around development, and then make well-being a team objective. So these can be monthly well-being checks. I know someone said beforehand for their CPD, they're using the opportunity to come together before Christmas to discuss mental health and well-being, or a team building activity once per quarter. And how do we track this then is the final piece of the puzzle before we bring in the questions. Well, this is where we can use, we bring up, we'll discuss these now. We can use engagement. So we can use pulse surveys. We've got Microsoft Forms. If you use those, we can also use other techniques to get a pulse check of what's going on. We could use NPS, so Employee Net Promoter Score. Would they recommend this company to a friend? That's a simple but powerful gauge. And we can use analytics to really get into it. So happiness surveys is something that we do at People Unbox. And we can have some work-life balance indicators. So measure how much overtime people's doing or if they're taking advantage of the flexible working. In terms of stress, well, we could have within those meaningful one-to-ones self-reported stress scores, so scoring themselves on a regular basis of where they're at and getting them to reflect on that stress U curve, or we can get them to think about um, how how they're coping with that stress with those meaningful questions and support. Also, what we can use here is data for those in HR. We can use data from the feedback and exit interviews as to the reasons why people leave and try to uncover any well-being related issues. And finally, building on everything we've said, the energy check-ins. How energized are you today? How much energy have you got on a regular basis? And in this as well, building on the physical well-being, because they are interlinked. Are people using those well-being guides, the initiatives such as reduction in gym membership, mental health resources, well-being days, as Arlene's just mentioned, which is going to lead to better well-being? Arlene, should we bring this to a close and see if people have got
Yeah.
some questions?
Yeah, I think there are lots of different examples. If we think back to that pyramid earlier on, we really need to look at how we can be more proactive. So for me, spotting those early signs and acting quickly. Don't ignore it. We can really prevent those small issues really becoming big crises and support people. Use the wellness action plans because that gives you a structure that helps you ongoingly support that well-being. But also take time to really take care and be consistent and be practical. But then as well, you might need some additional training. So I really love what Kate said there at the end. Take time to actually listen to people and not just tick a box. Actually listen to what they're actually saying to you. Practice that because that takes a lot of practice and a lot of effort. But if you remember those things, people will feel appreciated. Balance that empathy and accountability. People still need to do a job. We can't not do that. We still need to hold people accountable, but checking people as well as progress. Look at how you can align them with performance. So I love all the different ideas you've got in the chat, and it's really building in that. Ask them what's important to them. How do we integrate that well-being and goal setting and reviews, but make it sustainable, building that success. Remember, we don't want to fall off that cliff and hit that burnout. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. So it has been very quick. I think this one's went extra quick today, Rich.
Aye.
We would love to hear questions and we're more than happy if you want to speak to us. If you put your hand up if you would like to speak, rather than put in the chat, I'm more than happy to unmute you if you would like to speak. But we'd love to take some questions if anyone has got questions. Has it been useful? Has it been worth spending the hour with us? I'd love to hear from a few people. I'm conscious it's just coming up on 1 o'clock. So what I think we'll do is, for anyone that wants to stay on and ask us questions, I'm more than happy, both me and Rich are, to stay on, answer any questions. For those that have to go, and I realise and appreciate you're all busy, we just really want to thank you for your time today and spending this with us and sharing what you're currently doing. I think it's really refreshing and nice to hear what everyone's doing. I'd love for you to give us some feedback, let us know what you thought. Follow us on LinkedIn as well, give us a follow. And if you do want to stay on and ask any questions, we're more than happy to stay on and answer. And we'll maybe see you again next time for a new webinar in the new year. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.